Hi there, this is Mo Abdelbaki, and today I'm going to talk about the Zodiac, Tropical, Sidereal, Equinox, Solstice, Precession, and other cool words. Or perhaps we just call this, why does the astrological year start with Aries? So I'm going to try and answer this and some other questions, and by the way, my name is Mo Abdelbaki. And we're just going to talk about some fascinating things today, like what exactly is the Zodiac? Okay, well, we've all heard of it, I think, but the Zodiac is the background of stars that the sun moves in front of on its journey across the ecliptic. All right, well, we introduced another word there, ecliptic, but we'll get to that, okay? So let's start off with a constellation. We'll call it Constellation A, or Mo has explained it to us. Now we need another constellation, and that is Constellation B, or Confusus Morris. Okay? We need one more thing to really kind of get this going, and that's the ecliptic. That is a representation of the ecliptic. And what is the ecliptic? That's an imaginary line that the sun travels on every day of the year. Okay? And that's what changes the seasons, and that's what, so on and so forth. So what is the Zodiac? Well, what we do is we divide the ecliptic into 30-degree sections. And each 30-degree section, we say, is one of the signs of the Zodiac. So the sun is, let's say, in Constellation A, and then as soon as it moves into Confusus Morris, we would say that it is now the season of Confusus Morris. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Okay? Hope I didn't confuse you, Morris. Now, here's a representation showing the ecliptic in a different way. There is the sun in the sky. Now, you see that line. That line is, in fact, a representation of the ecliptic. Now, let's take away the sunlight to make it easier to see. And if you look very carefully, you can see that there September, October, November, the sun moves 1 degree a day through that. Now, let's take a look at some constellations at the meantime. So there's Virgo. You can see it came out of Leo. It moves from the right to the left. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the months. So this is the month when the sun is in Virgo. Now let's move on forward and take it to where the sun is going to be in Libra. Okay, well, that's the next month. It hasn't quite gone in there. Now it's in Libra. The next month, well, of course, we'll bring it into Scorpio. The next month into Sagittarius. The next month into Capricorn. The next month into Aquarius. Then into Pisces, then into Aries, and then into Taurus. All this on the ecliptic. There's Taurus. The next into Aquarius, right? Then into Cancer, or close to it, into Leo, and then back once again into Virgo. And that is the astrological new year. I did that so that no one would feel slighted. Depending on who you are, what you are, well, you were represented there, okay? Now, the next question is, what exactly is the vernal point? Okay, this is very important because we use the vernal point in everything we do in astrology. It is the point on the ecliptic, that line we just saw, where the sun is positioned on the vernal equinox, which usually takes place between March 20th and 23rd, depending on the year. And this is known to astronomers as 0 RA, or 0 degrees of right ascension. Okay? It also is, for those of us who are lay people, it is the first day of spring in the modern calendar. In the old calendar, it was mid-spring day. Okay, let's not get into that right now, but that's the first day of spring. So once again, we've got the ecliptic, okay? We need the sun, and X marks the spot of the vernal equinox, usually represented by the letter V for vernal, or with the sign for Aries, okay? Which is fascinating because some people still use that. Now, on the equinoxes, the sun rises due east and sets due west. Okay, that's very important because from then the days either get shorter or longer. Well, they get shorter or longer anyway, but they go north or south of that east-west point, and that's what changes the seasons for us. Okay, so we can see there that when the sun lands on that X marks the spot, that's the vernal equinox. Okay, now this is the symbol for Aries. and it's also the symbol for the equinox. Yet, astronomically, the vernal equinox now takes place in Pisces. But don't get excited. It really is okay? In the West, we use what's known as the tropical zodiac, the tropical system. In this system, the first day of spring always occurs at 0 degrees of Aries. So, the question is, what is the tropical zodiac? That's a good question, right? Okay, this uses the tropics to mark the summer and winter solstices, not the location of the zodiac or on the zodiac where the sun is located on the solstice. Okay, I know. Let's take a look at a graphic here. This is our Earth, more or less. This is the Arctic Circle. This is a line that's known as the Tropic of Cancer. The equator, very important because the equator is extremely important to us because it divides the hemispheres. This is the Tropic of Capricorn, and down here we have the Antarctic Circle, okay? Now, in the tropical zodiac, we have this system like this. Now, that is the ecliptic, that thing we saw earlier, that line. So let's take it the first day of spring. Take a look at. I almost speak English. That's the first day of spring right there. You can see that the sun on the ecliptic is touching the equator. Now, if it were actually touching it, the Earth would be vaporized, but that's a different story. All right, now let us move forward here, and here we have the sun moving up here to summer. Now, you notice that that ecliptic line is touching the Tropic of Cancer. When it gets to that point in its journey, let's put it that way, then we say that's the first day of summer or the summer solstice. Now we can go on forward to autumn. And there we see we once again are touching the equator, and that is the autumnal equinox. And we've got one more, and that's when it gets down to the bottom there. We see that we have the Tropic of Capricorn being touched, as you can see in that. And that's the first day of winter for us in the northern hemisphere, or what's known as the winter solstice, okay? And then back up again to spring, okay? So this is, and you notice the angle there? That's because the Earth itself is actually tilted upon its axis, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, let's look at this just a little bit closer. We talked about the Arctic Circle, the Tropic of Cancer, and when the Tropic of Cancer and the sun connect, that becomes the summer solstice, okay? And it used to happen in Cancer, the crab, the constellation, okay? It's been a while, but it used to happen there at least 2,000 years ago, okay? Now, the equator, and we know that when we hit the equator, we have the equinoxes, all right? Now, at the bottom line here, well, not the bottom, but next to, we have the Tropic of Capricorn, right? And when we get to the Tropic of Capricorn, we have the winter solstice, right? Which used to take place in the constellation of Capricorn. And at the bottom, we have the Antarctic Circle. And if you're there, you're very cold, okay? Most of the time, I think. And now notice, there's an area between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn that is known as the tropics. That's why they're called the tropics. And if you look at that map, you'll see that the areas involved are, generally speaking, well, relatively nice weather, right? More temperate, more easygoing than some of the other parts of the world. Okay, those are the tropics. All right, now let's just look at this a little bit more and kind of review what we're talking about here. On the winter solstice, we say that the sun is in Capricorn. And on the summer solstice, we say that the sun is in Cancer. All right? However, astronomically in the sky, on the winter solstice, the sun is now at about 6 or 7 degrees of Sagittarius. And on the summer solstice, it is about the same amount of degrees in Gemini. Okay, now let's look at the equinoxes. The vernal equinox used to take place in Aries, and the autumnal equinox used to take place in Libra. Now, well, takes place in Pisces and in Virgo. Now, don't let that bother you. All right, one is a system that is used And it's, by the way, the kind of the same system that's used by astronomers. The vernal point is always called 0 degrees of Aries, okay? So there's nothing, it works. It works in Western astrology, it works in Vedic astrology. We use the Pisces and Virgo markings, okay? By the way, just so you know, there's a thing in astrology called the fall of a planet. So, for example, if a planet is exalted in a sign, for example, the sun is exalted in Aries, then it is at its fall in Libra. And that is why we call that time of the year the fall. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So the question is, why do these points change? This is due to something known as the precession of the equinox. Boy, it's a mouthful. It's not easy, but here it is, okay? Imagine a spinning top, and it's here on Earth. Now, I say that for a reason, okay? You'll see in a minute. And that it is spinning counterclockwise. The Earth actually spins counterclockwise, okay? We need to remember that. And so what happens is it wobbles like a top. Now, on a top, as it slows down, it begins to wobble. That's the best I can do with this software, okay? So we have, and it spins around and it precedes itself, okay, in that fashion. And here on Earth, this is called precession, but here on Earth, we see that it happens counterclockwise, just as the top itself is counterclockwise. Now, let us take this and look at the Earth in space. This is a very important concept. We are in space. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have it spinning counterclockwise, just as we had before. That's the rotation of the Earth on its axis, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to have it wobbling and doing the same thing the top was doing, except for one big difference. Even though it is rotating counterclockwise, it precedes clockwise. What the heck? Okay, this, by the way, takes about 26,000 years to happen. Okay, which is why a great astrology teacher of mine said that a chart can't be reproduced for another 26,000 years. So yours is pretty darned individual. Don't ever forget that. Every 26,000 years. Okay, so the question to me was, why counterclockwise? And what causes precession anyway? Well, that's actually a really good question. And so I did what everyone does when they have such a question. I went to the great repository of information, the internet. Ta-da! The internet, we all love the internet. It is the bastion of knowledge. It is a place where there is great information, and it's never, ever wrong, right? The internet is this repository, this gigantic library with everything you can imagine, and it is never, ever wrong. Or is it? I actually had a thought. What would Albert Einstein think if he had some time with the internet and the knowledge he found out there? That's kind of what I think he would think, okay? Because there's a lot of misinformation. And I spent days, right? What I discovered is that it had something to do with what's called torque. No, let's talk about torque. Torque is physics. And here's the answer to the question. Now, for those of you who are saying, oh, I get that, good for you, because I don't get that, okay? As a matter of fact, here is mathematics and physics, and here is my brain on mathematics and physics. And so you can see there was just not a chance. But the point has to do with the idea of the torque in space, in that gravity, is different than it is here. And actually, there are many different theories as to why the Earth goes clockwise in its precession rather than counterclockwise. So let's not get into that. Let's get back into the simple stuff here, okay? Let us say, and here's the zodiac, and you can see Aries is right at the 9 o'clock spot, if it were a clock, and then at 8 o'clock is Taurus, the next sign, and so on, right? And we're going to say that each of these is approximately 30 degrees apart, okay? Okay, now we're going to take this arrow, and that's going to represent Aries, and about 2,000 years ago, the vernal equinox took place right there, okay? Now, at about 2,000 years ago, it switched. Okay, so between 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, it was right there, and then it switched, and it went into Pisces. Okay, Now that's where it is right now, and we are really getting close to the Aquarian age, but astronomically speaking, the age of Aquarius won't occur until the vernal equinox takes place in Aquarius. And likewise, it'll go to Capricorn and Sagittarius and the rest of the signs all the way around until it gets back to Aries in 26,000 years, give or take. Now, wow, now we understand that, right? But the question is, what exactly is a sidereal zodiac? Well, it's a zodiac based on the position of the sun as it is in the sky and not as it's based on the tropics. But, okay, there are many different sidereal zodiacs. Why? Because there are different systems, the Chitra-Paksha, the Lahiri, the Fagan-Bradley, and others, and others, and others. And in fact, I use the Lahiri sidereal system. It's called an Ayanungsha. Now, specifically speaking, the Lahiri is a Chitra-Paksha. And I could explain that to you, but why waste, who needs? Anyway, so it is a Chitra-Paksha system, but the Chitra-Paksha changes every year and blah, 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 blah. Okay? To be honest with you, doesn't matter whether it's Vedic astrology, it doesn't matter whether it's Western astrology, because it's about the reader and not the tool. Okay? All right. Remember that. It really is not about the flashy tool you use. It's about how you use it. All right, let's move on to some lovely, show and tell here. This is the vernal equinox, and where it occurred on April 14th, the year 3000 BCE, before the Common Era. As you can see, it happened in Taurus, right about the eye of the bull, okay? Now, we're going to use this arrow to show us where the current equinox is, and if you were there 3,000 years ago, that's where it happened. Okay, the sun is going to move in 1,000 years to the right, to our right. So from Taurus, it'll move toward Aries. So that's what that's going to represent. Now, let's move forward 1,000 years, and you'll see that now we're at April 7th, 2000, before the Common Era. Notice that red arrow, and then there's a dotted red arrow. The dotted red arrow shows us where the equinox was 1,000 years earlier. Notice it's gone back 1 week, as well as, at the same time, it has moved pretty significantly, soon to go into Aries. So this was April the 7th of the year 2000 BCE. Now let's see what the next 1,000 years brings to us. Here we go to March 30th. Notice we've gone back another week. 1000 BCE, and it's absolutely smack dab, it's going on in Aries. You can see where it was the millennia before, with the dotted line, and here's where it's happening in the year 1000 BCE. Now it gets interesting because we move forward 1,000 years, and this time I chose March 22nd, the vernal equinox, in the year 1, what we used to call AD, Common Era, okay? And you see that it is happening in Pisces. Well in Pisces, as a matter of fact. Okay, now Pisces is a pretty big constellation. So we're going to go, notice March 22nd. That's kind of where we have it now, right? Now we go further forward in time, and we're at March 14th, the year 1000 of the Common Era, right? We're only, 66 years away from William the Conqueror, for example. Vikings are doing their thing. Fascinating time. But you can see that the sun is still pretty much in Pisces. Okay, it just is. That's where it is. Okay, and we're still within that Piscean era. Now, watch what happens when we move forward to the year 2000. You can see we're still pretty seriously in Pisces, but also that the equinox has moved back, okay, to March 20th, where it stays every year, and that's because of the reformation of the calendar in the year 1752 that took place in 1754. It's a long story, but what it does is it changes things to where the calendar doesn't keep moving back, okay? So this is where it was on March 20th of the year 2000. Now, when do we get to the Aquarian age? That's a darn good question. Let's move forward to March 20th of the year 3000. That's when we will be in the Aquarian age. Now, we'll actually get there earlier than that, depending upon how we divide things up. But if you're going by the placement of the sun and the vernal equinox in a constellation, it's going to be a while, 450, 500 years, something like that. Okay? So that's just how that goes. Now, after Aquarius, of course, it'll move into Capricorn. And after that, it'll move into Sagittarius, So, anyway, that's it. We talked about the zodiac. Did we talk about it? Oh, yeah, we got that. About the equinox, you bet. We talked about that. About the solstice, we talked about that. About precession, I probably totally muffed that one up, but I tried. We talk about the tropical system, the sidereal system, and all these other cool words. And we also discuss why do we start the astrological year with Aries. Okay? Now, the graphics were courtesy of Starry Night Pro 7.3. Pretty good software. I like it. And the rest of the drivel was from me. So thank you for watching. I hope it helped. Peace and love to you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.